Do you sometimes wonder if the work you do really matters? Do you sometimes get in that doubt vortex? Maybe you're feeling tired and overwhelmed and wondering, what's it all about? Like, do you sometimes just want to chuck it all or maybe at least roll over in bed and hit the snooze button again? This episode is all about reconnecting you to what's important, boosting your mindset, and calling you forward with that inner courage and reminding you that you really do matter and that how you show up and your work matters. I can't wait to talk to you more about this today. So, hello and welcome. I'm Laura West. I'm here from the Center for Joyful Business, and I'm your host of Joyful Business TV. So, I'm the CEO and business coach for joyfulbusiness.com. And for over 20 years, I have been helping conscious, soulful, and ambitious entrepreneurs who are pretty highly creative and they want to grow. I know you want to grow and share your soul work, make a difference in the world while also making great money. So for me, it's all about, like the secret is all about aligning from the inside out so that you can truly flourish in a way that is sustainable, and that you're going to enjoy it so that you don't want to hit the snooze button every day, right? So here's what I want you to know. I want you to know that I deeply, deeply believe in you, and that I do believe that you and every one of us, we are innately designed to flourish. Like we already have what we need inside. Just like the acorn is destined to turn into the oak tree, right? The sunflower seed is going to become this beautiful giant sunflower. But we just need to get the stuff out of the way so that we can release your potential and your possibilities. So that's where we're going to be focused on. That's what we're going to be focused on today. So let me tell you how this works. If you're here live, for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to share about our topic. And I'm just going to check in here and make sure I've got everything all set up here. Yep, we are good to go. So for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to share about our topic, and then I'm going to open it up for you. So I'll be here for another 30 minutes to answer your questions, to talk about your business and what's going on for you as you grow and create your own joyful business. So today, we're going to talk about purpose, the ripple effect, showing up again, and how you matter and your work matters. So one of my favorite books is called The Great Work of Your Life by Stephen Cope. And it starts out the very first page with a quote. And the quote says, and I've changed the pronoun to fit this audience, is that every woman has a vocation to be someone. But she must understand clearly that in order to fulfill this vocation, she can only be one person, herself. In order to fulfill this vocation, she can only do that by being one person, herself. So my work with purpose-driven and soul-led entrepreneurs, it's just that. It's about this simple idea and yet incredibly challenging and vulnerable work to be yourself. It's amazing how hard that can be to let everything down, right? Let people see the real you, right? Because it's really vulnerable. We are so trained to look outside ourselves to get feedback on, are we doing it right? What do other people think? Are we doing the right things? Are we being the right person, right? But the more we can let go of those shackles, those boxes that we put ourselves in, the more freedom you're going to feel, the more creativity you're going to unlock, right? We love that when we unlock our creativity, that actually allows us to have a greater impact. And the greater impact looks like positively changing lives with our business and how we show up in our business. It looks like having a greater impact looks like reaching more people with your message, right? Waking them up to the possibilities of what's possible with your solution, attracting more opportunities to you. And yes, having a greater impact also means making more money. So not everything directly leads to more money in a 1 + 1 = 2 kind of formula. But what it does is 1 + 1, I always say, equals 11. right? Because you never know the opportunities you're going to create. You never know the people, the conversations, what's going to happen that's going to lead to more opportunities, more impact, more clients, and ultimately more money, right? And the money is, it's like when we go for the money first, that's really, it's tricky because it's not really sustainable. It's not as life-giving. And we're seeing that with, I know, millennials and even younger, where they're motivated by money, but it's like they know that in order to have a life that they really want to enjoy, and they want to enjoy life, that they also need the money, and that they go hand in hand. Enjoying life actually has you make more money. And the studies are showing now, not that money gives happiness, but when you're happy, you actually make more money. So stay tuned. We're going to talk more about that in future episodes. But this idea of showing up, right? Living your purpose, living your gifts, really standing in your values of what's important to you, can make a difference in so many ways. And sometimes you know, here's what I did and here's what happened. And then sometimes you don't know. So we call that the ripple effect. It's like throwing the stone into the water and then seeing the ripple that happens, the next ripple that happens, the next ripple, and so on. And that happens when you do something for someone, or you show up on your podcast or your TV show, you write your newsletter, you coach someone, you're there for someone in a way that's really kind and maybe even unexpected. And you have that impact on that person's life. But then there's a ripple effect that impacts more people in their life and in their lives. And it can change the trajectory of a day, that can then change the way they show up and show up and show up. So it can be something as simple as about a month ago, I came back from my trip from Guatemala, and guess what? I have COVID. And so I was in isolation, for a week. And towards the end of the week, it was like, oh my gosh, I have to get out of here. It was time. I was ready to go and safe to go. And so I thought, I'm going to go to Starbucks, and I'm going to drive through Starbucks and get my favorite pink drink. For those of you who don't know about pink drinks, it's coconut milk and the strawberry concoction. It's really delicious and it's light. Brings a smile to my face. So I order my drink. I pull up to the window, and the friendly woman at Starbucks said, "Oh, you don't owe anything. The car ahead of you paid already. They paid for you." Oh my gosh, what a surprise. What a delight. That pay it forward concept when you're in the drive-through. But here was the thing, that person didn't know I was just coming out of COVID and isolation and being travel weary and things like that. So it felt, on a regular day, it would have felt really kind, right? This felt particularly kind and loving. It had me feel so connected with humanity and with the goodness of people. And, she'll never know the impact that had, that how it didn't just make me smile, but it really went deep into my heart, because I was coming out of this period, right? And so, and it was the first day back out of the house. So it was really particularly meaningful. And you know what? It took courage for her to do that. Now, that was a little thing, right? You might say it's not that much courage, but you know what? It does take courage to sit at the window and say, you know what? I'm going to pay for the person behind me, and not know how it's going to show up, and not know how it's going to be received. And so to me, that is living your purpose of looking at the world and leading with your heart, right? Leading with your heart. So that's a simple and small example, right? There's so many ways that shows up. So I'm going to share some more examples and share a story with you about some really big ways that has happened, and how a tiny difference can make a really big difference. So in my favorite book, one of my favorite books, The Great Story of Your Life, Stephen Cope talks about these 3 principles. He shares these 3 principles about living your purpose and making a difference. And the 3 principles, this is what we also teach at Joyful Business, is the first one is trust in the gift, right? Really taking the time to excavate and understand, appreciate, and claim your gifts. I like to call that your beautiful brilliance, your gifts of your unique strengths, your unique wisdom and expertise, right? Your talents, even your weirdness and your quirks become part of your gifts, right? So that's number 1. The second principle is think of small as large. Small acts, right? We always hear about the small acts of random kindness, like the woman who, bought my pink drink, bought my order in the line at Starbucks. But really align yourself with the idea that small is large, because you never know the ripple effect of that. That woman's going to never know that I was coming back to my first day of work. That made me, my heart was expanded. Had so much energy. I felt so excited for the day, and it restored, not restored, but I have faith in humanity, but it really connected me to that faith in humanity. So it reconnected me to my work that I do in this big way. And that has a large impact, and that impacted all the clients that I coached that day. So again, you never know where that ripple effect's going to go. And then the third principle is listen for the call of the times, right? And that is, first of all, we start out going inside with your gifts, trusting that every step, every impact makes a difference. And then listening for what is relevant right now. How can I bring my gifts forward in the world and make a difference? And it might be as small as buying somebody's drinks, buying somebody's order, or something bigger that you do with your business. So I remember years ago when I first started my coaching business, and I worked with this woman who worked for the CDC. Back before the CDC was like common language, everyday language, right? She had a really tough situation at the time. There had been this harassment case and she was involved with, and her colleagues were mad at her and they were really making things difficult for her. And so she hired a coach to really help her through this. And so we were working on how to consciously change her relationships and her environment so that she could be happy at work, right? Have a joyful business, have a joyful career, and really make a difference with the work that she was doing. And I can remember several times where she was emailing information to another department. And we did something as simple, right? A small act as sitting with that email before she sent it and sending it with intention, as though you could send that email out. This can sound a little woo-woo, but energy, it's all about the energy, right? She sent it with the energy of how she wanted it to be received. She actually visualized the way that she wanted it to be received. She wanted it to be received with openness, with an open heart and open mind. She wanted them to really get that she cared, and she cared about them. She cared about what she was talking about, and that it would, what their concerns were mattered, and that she was here. The lines of communication were open. And each time she did that, it was like more and more. She cracked open this relationship, with her colleagues, and she more and more started getting the support to be able to move her work forward and to be able to help them be even more successful, right? And she did this by slowing down and being more intentional with her emails. This was a simple thing that we coached on, and yet it had really a great ripple effect throughout the organization and throughout people's workday. Then she got really interested in how would this work in her family, if she was that intentional. And there were some things that were going on with her daughter. She was at a period of time where she was choosing her college, and things were just a bit tough, right? She was, so she started writing down. Created this exercise where every day she would write down things that she loved about and admired in her daughter. Because, she was having trouble seeing her daughter with light and love, right? It just wasn't happening. And every day she would just write in her journal and write down, all right, here's things I admire. Here's what I love about my daughter. And you know what? It softened her. And she reconnected to the love she has for her daughter. And then that changed the way that she showed up, right? And within 3 days, it totally opened up their relationship because she started showing up differently. And then, it was like they became closer than they ever had been. And then, to this day, I still get messages. This is 20 years later, almost 20 years later. I still get messages from that client. She brings a smile to my face every time. She's moved all over the world, and she still reaches out every couple of years just to tell me like what a difference that I'm making and how much I influenced her life and changed her life, and that I'm still doing it. You know what? That is priceless, right? And that keeps me going. So sometimes you see and hear the ripple effect, and sometimes you don't, right? And so there's something about showing up, committing to your gift, that you have this gift, your purpose, your gift to give out into the world, over and over again. And so your commitment, it's about your commitment to your gifts, that you're going to show up and live your gift, right? Principle number one. So I want to read a little story for you and the rest of the time that we have together. And this is from another one of my favorite books, and it's called The Noticer. The Noticer. All right. And it's by Andy Andrews. And I'm just going to shift my screen view here. All right. And we're dropping into the middle of the book. Here's the book here, Andy Andrews, The Noticer. This story always moves me. So this book is a parable, and it is about this guy Jones who shows up in this town and all these different places. Nobody really knows where he comes from, where he's at, but he engages people in these kind of philosophical conversations, and he always shifts their perspective, right, into something, a perspective that is more resourceful and a whole new way to look at things. So in this one situation, Jones, is sitting on the park bench with this woman, an older woman. Her name is Willow. And they're having this conversation about her she's feeling older, like her life has passed. She's done what she's here to do. And her kids are grown, and, her husband's passed on, I think. And so she's just kind of feeling like she's not really having an impact, or things don't quite matter. And Jones says, if you are breathing, you are still alive. If you are alive, then you are still here, physically on this planet. If you are still here, then you have not completed what you were put on this earth to do. If you have not completed what you have been put on this earth to do, that means your very purpose has not yet been fulfilled. If your purpose has not yet been fulfilled, then the most important part of your life has not yet been lived. And if the most important part of your life have not yet been lived, and Jones pauses, waiting for Willow to follow his thought. She's like, that is my proof of hope, says Willow. He says, yes, the most important part of your life is ahead of you. Even during the worst of times, one can be assured that there is more laughter ahead, more success to look forward to, more children to teach and help. She was a teacher. More friends to touch and influence. There is proof of hope for more. And they were silent for a time before Willow spoke again. But where do I begin? How do I start? She asked quietly. Don't misunderstand me, Jones. I am old but not hard-headed. I am convinced and excited that I'd like to accomplish something. I know it won't be a big thing, but it would be nice to know that I'm at least making a tiny difference. Jones kind of smirks, and he's shaking his head, and he's like, sorry, but I have never known a single person to make a tiny difference. I am not even convinced that it's possible. So you will have to settle for making a huge difference. So intrigued, Willow says, go on. And Jones says, while it is true that most people never see or understand the difference they make, or sometimes only imagine that their actions are having a tiny effect, every single action a person takes has far-reaching consequences. Do you know the name Norman Borlaug? Willow shook her head. Norman Borlaug was 91 when he was informed that he had been personally responsible for saving the lives of 2 billion people. 2 billion people? Willow exclaimed. How is that possible? Norman Borlaug was the man who hybridized corn and wheat for arid climates, Jones says. The Nobel Committee, the Fulbright scholars, and many other experts calculated that all over the world in Central and South America, Western Africa, across Europe and Asia, through the plains of Siberia and America's own Southwest desert, his work saved from famine over 2 billion people, and that number is increasing every day. Wow, incredible, Willow said. Yes, isn't it? But the most incredible part of the story is that Borlaug, for all the credit he received, he was not the person who saved 2 billion people. What? Says Willow. Yes, that's right, Jones confirmed. I believe it was a man called Henry Wallace. He was vice president of the United States under Roosevelt. Willow says, I thought Truman was vice president under Roosevelt. Jones said, agreed. He's like, he was. But remember, Roosevelt served 4 terms. During his 3rd term, he had a vice president called, who was the former Secretary of Agriculture, and his name was Henry Wallace. While Wallace was vice president of the United States, he used the power of his office to create a station in Mexico, whose sole purpose was somehow to hybridize corn and wheat for arid climates. And then he hired a young man named Norman Borlaug to run it. So while Norman Borlaug won the Nobel Prize, it was really Henry Wallace whose initial act was responsible for saving 2 billion lives. I never knew, Willow said. Why don't I remember the man? He's like, that's okay. Now that I think about it, says Jones, it wasn't really Henry Wallace who should have gotten the credit. She's like, why would you say that? He drops his chin to the ground and rubs his face as though deep in thought. Maybe it was George Washington Carver who saved the 2 billion lives. Keep with me in this story. This is the ripple effect in action. He said, you remember him, don't you? Willow says, yeah, peanuts, right? What does he have to do with this? Well, what people don't know, says Jones, about George Washington Carver is that when he was 19 and a student at Iowa State University, he had a dairy science professor who allowed his own 6-year-old boy to go on botanical expeditions every weekend with this brilliant student, George Washington Carver. And so he took that little tot and he helped direct the 6-year-old's life. It was Carver who gave that 6-year-old Henry Wallace a vision about his future and what he could do with plants to help humanity. Jones shook his head in wonder. Isn't it amazing? Carver could spend all that time with the peanut, hours, months, and years of work. I mean, the man developed 266 products from the peanut that we still use today. And then there's the sweet potato, 88 different ways, different uses. He also wrote an agricultural tract and promoted the idea of what we call the Victory Garden. And Willow smiled. I remember Victory Gardens. We had one. And Jones said, yes, they were even in the middle of major cities. They fed a significant portion of our population during World War II. But with all that effort and time and years that Carver spent on things like peanuts and sweet potatoes and Victory Gardens, isn't it amazing that a few afternoons with a 6-year-old boy named Henry Wallace turned out to make that much of a difference? Wow, Willow said, truly. So it was George Washington Carver who actually saved all those people. Jones was like, well, maybe not really. He said, I think it was the farmer from Diamond, Missouri. And Willow threw up her hands. Okay, tell me. And so Jones says, there was a farmer in Diamond, Missouri named Moses who had a wife named Susan. They lived in a slave state, but they didn't believe in slavery. Well, that was a problem for the crazy people who rode through the farms at night, terrorizing what they called sympathizers. And then one cold winter night, these raiders attacked Moses and Susan's farm. They burned the barn, they shot several people, and they dragged off a woman named Mary Washington, who refused to let go of her son, George. Now, Mary Washington was Susan's best friend. So Moses sent word out immediately, trying to arrange a meeting with these cutthroats, trying to do something to get Mary and her baby back. Within a few days, he had the meeting set. And so on a January night, he took a black horse and he went several hours north to the crossroads in Kansas. And there he met 4 of these men who arrived on horseback, carrying torches, wearing the flour sacks with eye holes cut over their heads. And Moses traded his only horse for what they threw him in the burlap bag. As they thundered off, Moses fell to his knees, and there in the freezing dark, breath, vapor blowing hard, Moses brought out of the burlap bag a cold, naked, almost dead baby boy. And then he opened up his jacket, and he opened up his shirts, and he placed that baby next to his skin. Moses fastened that child under his clothes and walked that baby out, talking to that child every step of the way, telling that baby that he would take care of him and raise him as his own, promising to educate and honor Mary, his mother, who they already knew was dead. Jones looked intently at Willow, who stared back in wonder. And he said, that was the night the farmer told the baby he would give him his name. And that is how Moses and Susan Carver came to raise that little baby boy, George Washington Carver. So that's it makes me cry, right? I mean, it's such a sad story and yet a hopeful story, right? It's a story about it just moves me every time I read that. The actions of one person, like you never know what that ripple effect will be and how powerful it can be. You could save 2 billion lives without even realizing it by the simple acts that you do, that you create with somebody. So again, this story just always gets me. I always have a hard time when I read it. But I want to remind you that when you stand in your gifts and you really own, that living your life on purpose, inspiring others, being kind, that putting intention and having a conscious business where you live your values, treat people the way that you want to be treated, and share your gifts, your unique gifts that you have. You never know what the ripple effect will have. And here's the reminder, is that you are responsible for finding your commitment each day to look at your gifts, look at your purpose. How can you show up? And remember that small is large. And also remember, how are you needed now? Listen to the call of the times. How are you needed now? There's a great questions to ask yourself when you're laying in bed, tempted to throw your arm over and press the snooze button. It's like, no, wait a minute. How can I live my purpose today? How can I share my gifts? How can I do some small act of kindness? Something, it might be paying for, the pay it forward in the Starbucks line. It might be putting something on social media that just might make a difference in somebody's day, sharing your story, right? It might be showing up again with your gifts in your business, trusting that you are changing lives each and every day. And going back to, but wait a minute, okay, I love this, and I'm just trying to make money. I need to pay my rent, right? I need to pay my bills. I want to send my kids to college. Remember that when you live your gifts and your purpose, and you bring them into your business, this is how you create a sustainable business, right? Instead of just doing something like, how can I make some money? Because when you do it that way, you'll quickly and easily lose your sense of motivation. Then you will be hitting the snooze button each day. But when you're aligned with your gifts and your purpose, when you tap into more than your beautiful mind, we love our beautiful minds, but we need our minds, we need our heart. We need to tap into our creativity, tap into our will to create our dreams, to create the world that we think is possible. And you know what? Sometimes you'll see the ripple effect, and it'll come through your business in the form of money, opportunities, testimonials, client results. And also remember that you never know what will happen behind the scenes, that you just might change relationships, change the way that somebody shows up, change a decision that they make that could change lives forever. All right. Thank you for letting me share that message. It is a personal message that this is why I'm in my business each and every day. This is why I have joyful business. This is why I show up and do my purpose. So we're going to wrap up for today. I do want to let you know and invite you over to a couple of opportunities where you can get more of this. If you like this kind of conversation, then join our Facebook group over at Joyful Business Community. These are the kinds of people who are in this group, conscious entrepreneurs who are showing up day after day. And if you need some more inspiration and motivation, go over to joyfulbusiness.com. I have a free gift there that's called Activate Your Abundance. And there is you get a wonderful meditation that connects you to the universal abundance current to remember how amazing the world is and how you are surrounded by abundance all the time. Beauty, nature, money, opportunities, connections, opportunities to be able to share your gifts. And then there's a great 7-day journal where you can communicate with the universe and receive guidance each day. So I hope you enjoyed our show today. Thank you so much for coming today, and stay tuned for our next episodes. Thank you for watching this episode of Joyful Business TV. I want to invite you to get more creative strategies and support for growing your business. You can start right now by activating your abundance mindset with a really powerful creative visualization that will help you get into the universal abundance current, one of my favorite things to do. And you'll also get a companion 7-day journal that will help you create a daily habit of co-creating with the universe. These are two powerful resources that you can get started right now to help grow your business and activate that abundant mindset. You just go over to activateabundancegift.com.